Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday Night Dynasty Heat Seekers show. I'm your host, Bryce Frazier, and I'm joined by the always reliable Anthony Leone. Leone, how are we doing today?
I'm pumped, man. I'm great. Happy to be here. Happy to see you. Glad you're doing well.
Mm-hmm. How'd your fantasy week go?
Up and down, as it's kind of been everywhere. Most of my redraft teams seem to be struggling, but all of my dynasty teams seem to be doing pretty well. So I'm happy overall. I'm leading my division in my Scott Fishbowl League, so that's really cool. We did a live draft in San Francisco, so that's really cool to see. How about you? How about your leagues? How's things going?
I had high expectations. I'm in like 10 leagues, and 8 of them I wanted to be competitors in them, and it's kind of dwindled down. It looks like 6 of them can still definitely be. I got rosters that could definitely make the playoffs, and as we'll kind of talk about in this show, there's 2 where I've now had to kind of make a decision of where I want to go from there, and we'll kind of get into some of the strategies that I've incorporated moving forward with those rosters and why and all that stuff. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, we'll go ahead and touch on some of the news and notes, especially of fantasy relevant players. So it looks like the injury bug hit the running back position pretty hard this week. David Montgomery, Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift all appear to be like they'll miss at least 1 week or more. I believe Montgomery and Dalvin Cook are considered day-to-day, but a lot of times I think when you hear that, it's always like they miss 1 week, because that's how Chris Godwin was early, like last week as well. And it just doesn't make sense in week 4, moving into week 4, to kind of rush some of these big name players back into lineups, especially when their teams aren't doing, it's not like it's a huge win necessary at this point, like it could be like later in the season. So what are you making of these guys that are getting injured? Because obviously all 3 of them have pretty efficient backups when it comes to fantasy. So obviously in redraft leagues, I'm trying to acquire all of those backups. But which one would you prioritize out of these 3?
Well, in redraft, I mean, if Jamal Williams is available, I think he's the priority ad. I think in Dynasty, he's going to be scooped up. He'll be essentially impossible to grab. Khalil Herbert, we've talked about him in the offseason as a great buy. So obviously he would be up there too. Yeah, I mean, long term, I'd pay the most for Khalil Herbert. Mm-hmm. I'd pay the second most for Alexander Mattison. And then I'd pay the third most for Jamal Williams. But in a redraft setting, I'm going to want Jamal Williams more than any of them. That's partly because I'm positive DeAndre Swift isn't going to play. When news broke that he was going to need some time to get healthy, the first thing I did was I pulled up their schedule, and I saw a week 6 bye. And that says to me, he's not going to play week 4, week 5. He'll have an extra week off for week 6 with the bye. He'll be back week 7. So I think if you have Jamal Williams, you are looking at about 2 starts of pretty solid fantasy production. So for sure in redraft, he's the go-get. I think Dalvin Cook will play. He just had a dislocated shoulder. He's dealt with this in the past. He's worn, the harness before. I expect him to be out there. If you recall last season, his first game back after wearing that harness, he had a monster game. I'm not as concerned about Dalvin Cook as David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery will be active, but I do not think he's going to have an extremely large role. So I don't think you can start David Montgomery this week, whether he's active or not. I don't expect DeAndre Swift to be active for the next 2 weeks and then a bye. I do think Dalvin Cook will be active. I would start Dalvin Cook if I own him. So that would move Madison on a redraft handcuff basis to the lowest of my priority. Anything you disagree with anything I just said, or other than maybe thinking Montgomery's not active?
Yeah, I really think that if Montgomery's not 100%, it doesn't make sense for him to. He could be active, but I think that it's the Khalil Herbert show, because 100% Khalil Herbert is better than a 90% David Montgomery from what I see. Like Khalil Herbert is just as good as him. Like they're interchangeable to me. they're a little bit different style runners. Obviously, Montgomery's a little bit more physical, which has now led to injuries 2 years in a row. But his was kind of he got rolled up on, so it's not like that was more of his running style. But
sure,
I can see the point in Jamal Williams is the guy that I could see having more weeks played. So I get that. It kind of sucks because waivers run tomorrow, right? In most leagues, and we don't really get the injury reports till after. So, but because there was a lot of reports that it looks like Dave Montgomery might have a high ankle sprain or maybe an MCL, like a MCL sprain or something like that. That would hinder him for a couple of weeks. So it's like, do I take the risk of grabbing Khalil Herbert, who I think will be more involved in the offense than I think Jamal Williams will be, and take that risk? I'm not sure. I think those guys are a toss-up for me. Kind of
in all my redraft,
you like the most.
In all my redraft leagues, all these handcuffs are gone. I mean, Jamal Williams, 12-team leagues. Yeah, Jamal Williams is off. Khalil Herbert's owned. Madison's even owned. So in my leagues, it doesn't really matter. But of them all, again, I'd rank them Jamal Williams first, Khalil Herbert second, Madison third, and if you can get your handcuff, I think it's okay to do that. It kind of just depends on the makeup of your team. I'm not a huge handcuff guy. I don't like wasting roster spots like that. But it does make sense. And if you miss out on all these guys, I would take a stab at Jalen Warren and just stick him on your bench because I wouldn't be surprised if Najee Harris is on this list next week.
Yeah, and Warren looks pretty good.
Yeah,
like he looks nice. Yeah, I kind of just put it as Williams and Herbert are 1A and 1B, and then I put Madison as like number 2.
Okay.
So, Tony Snow, hey, how are we doing? If anybody asks any questions in the chat, we will answer them at the end of the show. So feel free to watch or ask any question, redraft or dynasty questions. Even though this is a dynasty stream, we answer all questions. If you do, just please put the format that you're playing in, especially if it involves like trade questions. So let's go ahead and just move on into the topic for the week, and it's: are we jumping ship? Or are we kind of weathering the storm with our rosters? So.
What a depressing topic. 0-3. Man.
0-3.
Oh, man.
I have had the luxury of not having to start 0-3 in any of the dynasty leagues that I don't want to be 0-3 in. That makes sense. Like there's one I want the first pick.
Yeah,
want the first or second pick. And so I'm happy with that. The rest of them, I've had to even like there's one where I'm 1-2, and you can even apply some of this logic to 1-2 rosters if like the only time I got my win was because I had the second least amount of points scored, and I played the guy that scored the least. That's how bad that guy was, and how bad my roster is. So I'm looking at a top 3 pick in that league too. So
have you ever gone 0-3 and won a championship? I've done it once that I remember in a redraft league. Can you think of any time you've ever done that before?
Honestly, I have no clue. I've probably at least started 0-3 mid the playoffs.
Sure.
I can almost guarantee that.
Sure.
So I'm not sure. I really haven't. I kind of just erase. I don't even know how I did last year in some of my leagues.
You let all the bad memories wipe those away.
Right. I just so many leagues. I mean, it's pretty, like when you talk to people and you're like, how many leagues you do? And I tell them, 10. They're like, how do you even do that? And I'm just like, when you do 10 leagues, it's almost like it's like math a lot of times. Like you have your rankings and you try and make your team as best as you can. But then there's like a couple of leagues that you focus on more than the others, right?
Of course.
You want to win in those leagues. The rest of the leagues, you're happy with whatever happens. It's kind of like how poker players do 10 tournaments online or 6 tournaments online at one time. Like they just have all the math in their brain and they just make decisions based on that. So that's how I kind of approach it as well. So with that being said, the first thing I had for some advice to give if you're starting off 0-3, is basically just don't look at your roster. Like, is your team 0-3 because it's bad? Like it's not ready. Like it's young players that aren't performing right now? Is it veteran players whose best years are behind them? Maybe they've had a slow start. You've got guys like Zeke and Alvin Kamara on your team. Even Derrick Henry, despite this last week, like Christian McCaffrey. These are all guys that you could have on your roster and be 1-2, 0-3. And just don't freak out, I guess is what I would be saying here. If you were 0-3, you still have plenty of time. Like there's 14 weeks in a typical fantasy regular season. You can easily come back from that and make the playoffs. Like I've seen people make it at 7-7, 8-6 is definitely doable, and 9-5 is like almost a guarantee. I think that you make your fantasy playoffs. All that is achievable still. If you lose next week, then maybe you're starting to go in a little bit more panic mode. Yeah. But again, look at your roster. Like if you're like, man, it's gonna be tough for me to win a couple of more games. It's gonna be tough for me not to lose a couple more games. So go look at other people's teams and then go from there. Look at your veteran assets. Do you need to start trading them for the most value that they have at this point in time? Guys I'm looking at are like, your Mike Evans, your DeAndre Hopkins, maybe some Devontae Adams, guys who you're going to get a good amount of value from, but their best years are probably gone. Like I don't imagine any of those guys I just named whose values really are going to go up from here. DeAndre Hopkins might a little bit when he gets off of suspension. So that's maybe a guy that I would maybe consider waiting on. But the others, like we told people that Devontae Adams isn't going to be what he was with Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is much better than Derek Carr, whatever people say. Adams is going to have to get like 20 targets a game to do what he was doing with like 12 targets with Rodgers. So that's the first set of advice I would have is look at your roster. Can you still compete? If so, weather the storm. If not, I think it's time to look at some veteran pieces and acquire maybe some younger guys and maybe some picks with that. Do you have anything to comment on that advice, Leone?
No, the one thing I'll say is if you're going to be, trying to do trades with league mates, the first thing you really have to do is have a conversation. Send them a message. Don't just send out blind trades. It's not really effective. It's like, it's better to have a relationship with these guys or gals, talk to them. And, honestly, like be genuinely interested in some things they have going on in their life, like maybe you're friends with them on Facebook. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just these randoms on the internet, which is fine. But if you know these guys, talk to them a little bit, find out what's going on with their lives, find out, because then you can actually have like a real conversation. And then it just makes the negotiation just a whole lot easier. It's easier to see eye to eye. It's easier to talk about differences. It's easier to joke around if something goes the wrong way or if they think that the trade isn't fair, your starting point was way off. It makes it all a lot easier. It helps you get more information from them. And that's really the best thing to do. And, a lot of times if you just ask someone what they want or what they're looking for, they'll tell you. And there have been so many times where there's a guy on my bench that I could care, nothing about. It happens, I'm not going to name names. All these guys in the league are talented players, but there are guys that you just have on your bench that, you just don't really think there's any value there. And, you may ask someone like in your league, like, hey, is there anyone on my team that you like? And I remember it happened earlier this offseason and they said, oh yeah, I'm really big on Nico Collins. And I thought, man, like that's like the last person I would have offered this guy in a trade, but he liked him. So we were able to work out a trade. I don't remember exactly what it was, but to me, it was like anything I got in return was a positive for me because I wasn't even excited at all to have Nico Collins on my bench. So it just goes to show having a conversation, asking what they want. Don't be afraid just to talk, and it'll really get a lot of deals made in that process.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing I like about Sleeper is it has the button where you could put people on the trade block. And it'll like notify the whole league. Put it out there. Put a message with it. Hey, message me. Let's find a deal on this. Like in any leagues I'm in, like MFL or ESPN, I'm in some sort of group chat. I'll put the player on the trade block in the chat. Like, hey, looking to move this guy. What do we all need? Or stuff like that. And I take advantage of when people do that as well. Like I just made a trade earlier this week or literally I accepted it this morning, where somebody was like, he didn't think his roster was going to compete, and he just has guys that are stepping up and winning them games like Tua and Devontae Smith, and he's like, hey, looks like I'm going to actually compete this year. Any veteran quarterbacks on the block? Well, I'm not competing. I've got Russell Wilson. I don't like how Russell Wilson looks. My team needs to be spiced up a lot anyway. I need draft picks. He's got Kenny Pickett, who I think will be starting here in a couple weeks anyway. Let's make a deal for that. I've got a veteran running back, Zeke, whose value every week seems to be decreasing.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I get rid of him before at the end of the season he's barely worth a second-round pick. So that's definitely I like that point. Take advantage of like not just sending offers and nothing. Because when you get a conversation going, that's when you get counters. Like, I feel like when I get offers and nobody messages me or says anything, I have no problem just saying no, bam. Where it's like when they message me, then I'm like, well, I kind of have interest in this guy and this guy. How do we get them incorporated in this deal? So made a couple of deals like that. Just this.
And then you're also not just wasting time. You know, like if there's someone on their team that they will not lose, you know, there's a guy in our league that I'm in, and he's a huge Bears fan. And I mean, it's like if he has a Bears player, don't even waste your time.
Right.
I know this, right? Like I already know this, but if I was in a league with him and didn't know that, it's like, oh, well, then you're just wasting time sending all these trades for this guy he's never going to trade. So just to have a conversation, you get a lot of information. You save time. It makes everything a lot easier.
Right. And then Chase Banks in the chat, we will answer that question at the end. I like that question.
Yes, we will.
So
we will answer that at the end.
Stay tuned, and we will answer that. And then, you know, the kind of second piece of advice not only piggybacks off what I was just saying, but it also kind of goes all the way back to last week. And it's like, if you're looking to rebuild, look young, because it doesn't make sense to go and grab veteran players off of other people's roster unless somehow you're going to flip them for more than you get them for. So look young and look for package deals. So if I'm trading guys like I mentioned, like DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, sure, let me get some draft picks in there because this next draft class is loaded. If you can get a first and like a player thrown in, or even like a couple of players and a second thrown in, because this next draft class is deep, you might find a lot of value in the second round. Guys, again, to mention, and we mentioned them last week. Zamir White was one, Alec Pierce, Desmond Ridder, and then Kadarius Toney.
Yeah,
are definitely super flex. If Desmond Ridder, don't worry about it if it's one quarterback.
Yeah,
but these are all guys who I think their best obviously is still to come. Alec Pierce is very involved in this offense, and he had a pretty decent week just this past Sunday. Zamir White, I still am pretty confident is going to be the starting running back for that team. And Kadarius Toney is a freak athlete. He's just dealing with some injury concerns right now. But I think once he's fully healthy and he stays healthy, he's going to be a problem once he's on the field. So I'm looking to get these guys in a deal along with a lot more, some more draft capital. So this even next will piggyback off my next piece of advice. So I might as well just jump into it. And that's know the rest of your league. And we kind of just a little bit touched on it, like know your owners, right? But look at their teams and look at their records. It makes no sense for you in a situation where you're trying to rebuild to go try and acquire young players and young picks from another guy who's also like 0-3 or 1-2, and his roster looks a little shaky. Like I always get, it's so funny because I always get, there's one league where I'm 0-3, and I've been rebuilding this roster now for 2 years, and it's like I always get offers for like Jalen Waddle and like Zach Wilson and Dak Prescott, and they're always on my side. I'm giving up them and like a pick, and then they're trying to offer me like a veteran player. Like that doesn't help me whatsoever. So don't hone in on a player, hone in on an owner is what I'm trying to say. So keep your player pool wide open of young guys that you're willing to acquire, and go find a guy that's already 0-3, or I'm sorry, 3-0, 2-1, and their roster's looking good. Like, hey, this can make a playoff push if it's healthy. And go trying to incorporate and grab some of these young guys and picks so that they're not only does their starting roster get better and they have a chance to win a ship, but it's a win-win for both teams. So I hate when people do that and they offer me veteran players for young assets when I'm just not winning games. So Leonie, any advice to add to that?
Yeah, another thing I would mention too is, yes, I agree with everything you said, but don't be afraid to also look at the teams that are 1-2, 0-3, maybe even next week 0-4. They may have a really good older team. They may think they're competitive, and they may be competitive. They just may have had some bad luck, or maybe they're just missing that wide receiver 2 or 3 on their team that would have helped them get over the top a couple weeks, or maybe they don't have enough quarterbacks, or maybe they don't have a good tight end or an upside young tight end, and maybe you think you could deal with them. And having a team, like, we've all been there. We've all had those teams that have, scored almost the most points, but are 0-3, 0-4, or just not winning the head-to-head matchups, but still have a pretty good team. And I mean, what the perfect icebreaker to talk to an owner to get a trade initiated is, man, you've had some crap luck. Like, I'm looking at your team, give them a compliment. Like, hey, I think you did a really good job building this team. And look at this bad luck you have just losing this game by 4 points. Like, take the time, look to see what happened. And if you can relate to them, all of a sudden they're going to be more open to saying, yeah, like, this guy wants me to win. This guy knows what's going on. And that's how you can get a deal made. So, yeah, know your league. I love how you said that. Know your league. Know the players who own these. Know the owners who own these rosters, and try to look at things from their perspective. Try to see if you can help them and how they can help you. That's how you can get a trade done. And if you're 0-3 and you think you can't compete and you want to try to rebuild, that's the best way to do it. Take a little bit of time, figure out what these owners need, and make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. There's you will still find people that are 1-2 and 0-3 that don't want to let go yet, right? Like, maybe they only have 1 or 2 leagues and they're not ready to, throw in the towel and give up yet. So you could still try and capitalize on that. So it still could make sense, but I think the point would be to get the conversation started before you go and offer something to them. I mentioned a couple of young guys I'd be targeting. Are there any names that, come to mind for you that you try and be looking maybe in a package deal for, like, some veteran players, or there's some other veteran players that come to mind that you would be looking to unload and part with in order to maybe get your rebuild started or off to a hotter start?
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the guys you listed. I mean, it really just comes down to your team. If you think it really just comes down to how long you think it's going to take for you to be really good.
Yeah.
So you look at your roster and you say, okay, am I going to win this year? Yes or no? Probably not. Okay, let's just say no. And then you look at your team. Okay, next year, who's coming back? Who's going to probably be in a good spot? Who's not? Like, so you have to kind of just think ahead, pretend what can happen, what probably will happen. Like Cooper Kupp's a good example. Like, if you have Cooper Kupp, if you're rebuilding, you better think you're going to win within the next 2 years. You better think you're going to win within the next 2 years. Because if not, if you're looking at like a 3-year, 4-year rebuild, then Cooper Kupp is literally worthless on your team. Completely worthless. Get rid of him. Trade him.
Max value right now. Same thing with Derrick Henry too. I think.
Definitely.
You could apply that to him.
Definitely.
Arguably Christian McCaffrey.
Definitely. I mean, really, any top running back older than 26, 20, 25 maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It comes to mind. Dalvin Cook comes to mind.
Now, if you're having a bad year, or maybe you've had an injury, maybe you have Deshaun Watson in a super flex, and you're like, man, it kind of reminds me of that guy I think you're in a league with, Michael. I know he has like Deshaun Watson. Like, he has all these guys that, like, they're going to be good next year. So you can see if you go to his team, I think it's Michael Vanderkoon. If you go to his team, shout out to Michael, Roto Heat follower. He's the man. He's a smart guy. But you look at his team and it's like, man, this team is just built for next year. And that happens. Sometimes, things just don't go your way. And then you can just build your team for next year. Yeah. And I think if I remember, like, I've seen his roster, like, it's like, man, this team is not good right now, but next year, like, you can just look at it and you go, yeah, this is going to be a good team next year.
Dak Prescott Deshaun Watson, Zach Wilson are his quarterbacks.
Yeah. So it's like this year, probably not going to do it. But man,
he running back. But yeah, Chris Godwin, another guy on his team. Calvin Ridley. Yeah.
Calvin Ridley.
He built it that way. I think he built it that way.
Yeah, and that's good. And that's how you can, just he just evaluate your team and then move accordingly.
I agree. So go ahead and talk about. I pretty much talked about all of the guys I did. There's just one point that I really didn't address, and that was don't sell early. Right. So if I'm looking to move some of these veteran guys, like another guy coming to mind, Michael Thomas, or especially DeAndre Hopkins. So I'll go back to him.
Yeah.
Don't sell low. Like I understand that you're wanting to rebuild, and you're wanting to get like picks and players now. But as the season progresses and more people are getting closer to the playoffs, and like, wow, there's some loaded teams going to the playoffs. My roster's kind of middle of the road. Maybe I can make a move to compete against these loaded rosters. People are going to be way more inclined to give away a first-round pick along with a second-round pick and some young players in order to get a guy that immediately plugs in their roster and puts up good numbers, all the guys that we've mentioned so far that are veteran players. So don't sell some of these guys low right now just to see, kind of getting what you can get. Like you throw a player out there like Mike Evans is available, guys. I'm looking to redraft. I'm looking to rebuild. And someone's like, oh, I'll give you and obviously competitors probably coming at you. So at best at this point in time, probably a mid-second and Zamir White for him. I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to wait. I'll hold on to all the veteran players that I have, and I will wait until it gets closer to the end of the season, or then people kind of get more in like not necessarily a panic mode, but more of like a anxious mode that they're willing to overpay maybe a little bit to get competitive people in their lineup. So again, value your guys appropriately and don't settle for anything less than it, especially this early in the season, because I think you're going to get your value or more closer to playoff time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's timing. It's timing. So when I think about like DeAndre Hopkins, I think, okay, he's a little bit older. He's still going to be really good when he plays, probably. And where's his value at right now? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you put him at?
His value,
just
like
his in relative to everyone else in the league, 1 to 10.
To everyone else,
yeah, just in general.
So I'm putting like 10 as like Cooper Kupp,
Justin Jefferson would be like a 10, and I think Russell Gage would be like a 1.
Jeez.
Right now, he's suspended. He's not playing for 3 weeks. But where would you put him just in Dynasty in general terms?
I think right now, I try and think in the layman's terms, right? So I'm thinking that right now he's probably like a 6, borderline 7.
Yeah, okay. So I have him at a 5. So that's okay. We're kind of like in the same range. That's good.
Right.
So check this out.
I think it goes up week 7.
Yeah, definitely. As soon as he starts playing, it goes up. But someone might say, well, wait a second. What if he plays and he doesn't do good? What if he, only gets 2 catches, I mean, you have to think like, man, even if he does really bad for 3 weeks, the lowest he can go relative to Russell Gage and Justin Jefferson is like a 4. You know what I mean? Like, chances are it's not going to be as low as like Julio Jones. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to kind of think like, okay, even if he does bad, worst case scenario, he's like down to a 4. But what if he comes out week 7, 8, 9, 10 and is lighting up the world on fire? All of a sudden he's going to be all the way up to a 9. So you have to understand, like you have to think about the risk reward. If I trade him now when everyone's just kind of mild on him, why trade him now when he can be on fire week 10, 11, 12? And worst case scenario, he doesn't do that well. He's still going to be valued about the same anyway. Like it doesn't make any sense to trade him now. Like you were saying, it doesn't make any sense to move him now. Wait until there's an opportunity to move him. Now, with all that said, if you go to our other points that we mentioned earlier in this video, and you reach out to an owner and they say, "Oh man, I really would love DeAndre Hopkins. My team is ready to go. I could even lose the next 3 weeks. I don't care. I'm pumped to have someone like DeAndre Hopkins on my team." Okay, well maybe you make an exception and trade him now.
Yeah.
But the point is just having this understanding of, hey, where's this player at? What are the range of outcomes if I trade him now as opposed to waiting? And if it's likely that they're going to be better than not, or not much worse if you wait, worst case scenario, then just wait. Yeah, maybe DeAndre Hopkins will get hurt and everything we just said is crap and he's valued like Russell Gage or Julio Jones. Yeah, but everyone can get hurt like that. So you have to just throw that out. Pretend that's not even an example or a possibility, because everyone can get hurt like that. So just understand your team, understand the players you have, and try to just think a little like chess. Think a few steps ahead, and that's how you can start making a lot of good decisions on your rebuilds.
Yeah, I agree. The only other time that I would sell a person like DeAndre Hopkins early is if I am projecting a player that I like to also gain value soon, right? I sent you a trade yesterday I made, and it was DeAndre Hopkins for George Pickens in a second. George Pickens, I really think that his value, he's gonna get targeted more. He's just a freak athlete that's not getting enough targets, and that's just because the quarterback plays trash there in Pittsburgh right now. Where I think Pickens in 3 or 4 weeks, his value is going to raise.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, and that's a perfect example. Perfect example.
5 to a 6.
Because if you wait to trade for Pickens,
or Pickett,
exactly. If you wait to trade for them, it's what's more likely? Who's going to be more valuable at that time? So you have to just play everything out. But I like to try to keep things simple. I like to use a 1 to 10 scale like that. I'm kind of dumb, so I have to really dumb things down. So I just have to think hey, if this guy's at a 5 right now, worst case he could be a 4, best case he could be a 9. Yeah, I'll wait.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead. Anybody who hasn't been here, if you're asking questions in the chat, stay tuned. We will answer them. We've got a couple in there, but we'll answer them here probably in the next about 10 to 12 minutes. So stay with it. All right, Leone, give your piece.
All right.
Your first piece.
So by the way, I just have to say, Bryce, you killed it. I loved all your points.
Thanks.
And I think people that are watching this show are learning a lot, whether they think they know all this or not. Even if they already know all this, it's always good to just walk through it, remind yourself what you need to do. So for those that are here watching, props, for real.
Yeah.
For real.
Thank you.
Okay, so my advice is go with your gut. Look at your team and try to see, look, is this just bad luck that I'm 0-3? Or is it just maybe I'm just living in this fantasy land where I think my team is really good and it's just not? So just try to be honest with yourself. Look at the other teams, know your league, look at the other teams, see how you stack up. Because you could be living in a fantasy world and your team is just really bad. But in my experience, most of the time, 0-3 is generally not as bad as it seems. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, but typically 0-3 is not bad. Most of the time, I think most teams, if you go back and look, go to your league history, most teams finish 7-8 or 8-7 or 7-7. If you go back and look, even the worst teams usually get at least 3 or 4 wins. So one way or another, you're probably going to get a couple wins here if you think you're a good team. So I wouldn't let a bad start just kind of throw you off your game. I've seen people rebuild early. Have you ever seen someone do that, Bryce? They have a pretty good team, and then all of a sudden they just start selling all their players and blow it up when they didn't have to. I've seen that before, and it's man, you didn't have to do that. You just had a couple of bad losses here. if you go back and look, like you can see like what went wrong, and it's like, man, like don't rebuild too early. That's one thing I want to stress. Because, man, if you're in a league, you have $50 league dues or maybe $100 league dues. I know you're in a league with like $250 league dues. I mean, the worst thing you want to do is rebuild early and then basically just write $1,000 check for the next 4 years that you're not going to win. Like, who wants to do that? Especially when you didn't even have to do it. So just be honest with yourself and understand. Look, 0-3. I know it can be like a big sign of trouble, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's just a little bit of bad luck, and you'll probably get a win or two here in the next couple of weeks, and everything will kind of go back to normal. So that's my main thing. I don't know if you agree with any of that or not, or if you have anything you can relate to any of that, Bryce.
Yeah, I see people do that after a startup draft. Like
I've seen that too. Yeah, like, and it's like if you were gonna rebuild right after your draft, why did you even bother drafting Julio Jones? Like, if your goal was to just blow this thing up, why are you?
I'll see him. Then I'll see him like sell like Jonathan Taylor and like I bought Devontae Smith off of him. After week 1, after the 0.0, I bought Devontae Smith and Malik Willis for a first round. I'm a competitor in this league. So I bought him for a first and second round pick. So probably going to be a late first and second. And obviously that Devontae Smith return has been great for me. So yeah, it's just kind of strange in it, but they're doing it the right way, at least in the sense of like, it was a startup. So they've got like Jamar Chase on their taxi squad and other guys on their taxi squad where they're not going to win a game. Like, they're putting up 70 points at most. So in this draft class is stacked and got like 4 first-round picks along with like probably 5 second-round picks. So probably 10 of the first 24 picks are going to be them. So I guess that's okay. And then it's funny to mention the 250 because that's kind of a league where I've already started the rebuild. But I look at –
But did you have to? Did you have to?
Yeah, I did. Because
that's okay then.
But, because I've got Barkley – I did sell Chase because quarterback was an issue for me. Quarterback and then just depth everywhere was an issue. I probably sold Chase when I shouldn't have because I took a lot of risk in that trade. And I won't really see the return on it for a couple of years, but like I had to because depth was an issue. Like if I had one dude get hurt, it pretty much crippled my roster. Like the replacement, whether it was running back, quarterback, or wide receiver, the replacement had a floor of 0 and probably a ceiling of 10 every time. So I had to go rebuild.
Bryce, are you okay right now? I mean, I didn't mean to make this so personal. I mean, if you need,
no, I'm just saying.
If you want to talk about this after the stream, I can kind of try to console you a little bit.
No, but I've been capitalizing on grabbing picks. Like I showed you, I sold Zeke and Russell Wilson for Kenny Pickett, 3 second-round picks. One of them being mine, so it's probably gonna be like the 203, 202.
Yeah. Good.
And like Corey Davis, somebody that can still plug in my lineup like during bye weeks or something like that. So I've got draft capital. I've got a lot of young players. Like this roster could be good next year. Like if George Pickens and Christian Watson end up being like startable assets, Zamir White, Tyquan Thornton. I've got all these guys that could, at least a couple of them should step up and fill my roster pretty nicely. But it's looking like it's going to be probably a year or two. And I'll be honest, like it was only my second auction draft I ever did. So
auction drafts are tough.
Yeah,
they're tough.
And I've gotten much better since then.
Yeah, they are tough.
I spent a lot of money when it started on like Zeke, Saquon, and Michael Thomas at the time when they were at the top of their game. And that obviously led to depth issues, especially at the quarterback position. Tight end was rough. So I'm kind of like maneuvering my way through this rebuild. It's kind of a fun process. I don't mind it. But yeah, I do agree. Like don't rebuild too early. But when I'm only doing it because I'm acquiring guys like Kenny Pickett in my rebuild, where this might be the cheapest we ever see him. It might be. It might be the most expensive we ever seen. If he goes out there and plays like Mitch Trubisky, the Steelers could be addressing quarterback again next draft. Yeah. But he went in the first round. He's probably going to get plenty of opportunity to show his value. Guys like I got Alec Pearson, some trade like that trade with Jamar Chase, James Cook, Dalton Schultz, picks, all that good stuff. So we'll see how that goes. But generally, I agree with the advice you gave, and it's just don't go with your gut. If you're 0-3, you could still come right back and win 3 in a row and be 3-3 and be right back in the mix of playoff contention the following weeks. So
definitely. And another thing to look at too that I just thought of is the points scored. So if you're 0-3 but have scored, a good amount of points relative to the other teams, I would hang in there, because especially in most leagues where that's a tiebreaker, that could be like an extra game in a sense. If you think about it, like if you tie, you'll leapfrog them. So it's like a half game advantage. So even though it looks like 0-3, it's actually 0-2-1 in that sense. And I think a lot of people overlook that. There are times where my team is like 0-3 or something like that, and my points scored is like super low. In that sense, I'm like 3.5 games back, right? Because even if I do tie them, there's no chance I'm going to overtake them on the points scored. So that's something to keep in mind too, is looking at the points scored, because especially when that's a tiebreaker, that's a big deal. And that gets overlooked a lot by a lot of managers. My next point with all that said is, if you've had hopes of competing, but you've been hit with just a lot of devastating injuries and whatnot, maybe it is time to throw in the towel. And there's no shame in that. Like you said, you had that team where you just said, look, this team isn't going to do it. I need to try to compete for next season. And I'm all for that. And you can make that decision now. You can even make that decision before the season starts and you haven't even played a game yet. There's no shame in that, because in Dynasty, it's not just about now. It's also about next year, the year after next. And even if you lose every game all year, in a way that's good. You're going to get the first pick. You're going to be setting yourself up for a lot of success next year. So one thing I like to do is have a list of what I call 2022 undesirable players and 2023 desirable players, and find the guys that are undesirable now but will be desirable next year. And we've already mentioned a couple of these guys on Michael's team, but it's Calvin Ridley, Deshaun Watson. Calvin Ridley's missing the whole year, so he's not desirable right now in 2022. Right. But he will be back next year, we presume. Deshaun Watson, similar situation. He's not playing for most of this year. We don't know if technically he's out. He's back week, I think, 11 or 12. You're not starting him his first game back. No one's going to play him his first game back. They want to see how he is, where he's at, how they look with him there. So he's really gone until week 12, week 13. If he has a poor showing his first game back, you're not going to start him the following week. He could be out all the way through the regular season at that point. So he's extremely undesirable now, very desirable next year. So I think Deshaun Watson makes the list. Trey Lance, obviously, he's done for the year. He'll be back next year, so he's a guy that I'd be looking toward. Mac Jones, really rough start to this year. Now he's hurt, maybe on IR. I know you know more about that situation than I would, but he's not looking desirable this year, but he could be better next year, so he's someone to target on the cheap right now. Other positions outside of quarterback and let's go with running back. Elijah Mitchell, he's gone for half the year. Who knows what's going to happen when he comes back? And then some wide receivers. David Bell, he's kind of tied to Deshaun Watson's value. So I think David Bell is not desirable this year, but could be very desirable next year. So he's a guy to target, David Bell. Van Jefferson just got put on IR. He's another guy. Allen Robinson, I don't even if he's back next year on the Rams, doesn't he just look kind of washed? It's kind of sad to watch him play. I think Van Jefferson could take a huge step forward next year.
When you see a quarterback struggling,
Yeah.
like Matt Stafford is, usually the number 2 gets hit the hardest with those struggles as well, right? Like the number 1s are going to get their targets, but when Matt Stafford's not putting up points in general either, like the number 2 is going to suffer. Like I feel like when that offense gets going, it'll be because Allen Robinson will be his production will also increase with the offense's production as well.
But Van Jefferson's still young enough. I mean, if you're rebuilding for next year, Van Jefferson, I think either way would be a good grab right now, especially given that he's on IR. He's not going to put any points up this year for the foreseeable future. Maybe toward the end of the year, we'll see. Tim Patrick and John Mechie end my list of guys that are undesirable for this year and desirable next year. Tim Patrick and John Mechie. Both, I think they're done for the year with injuries, but could have very nice seasons this following year. So again, to recap the list, and let me know if you disagree with any of these guys. These are my 2022 undesirables, but desirable next year players: Calvin Ridley, Deshaun Watson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, David Bell, Elijah Mitchell, Van Jefferson, Tim Patrick, and John Mechie. So if you're looking at a team that you think is, hey, I'm trying to go for next year, I mean, these names should all be like on Michael's list of like guys to get right now for his team that he needs to try to get on the cheap now while they're undesirable because they could be huge next year. Anyone you can think of you'd like to add to that list, or anyone you have a point of contention with any of those guys, Bryce?
All the names I've mentioned before of young guys I'd add, I would just put on that list as well. But the only one I don't think you'd be able to acquire would be Deshaun Watson, because if he's on a competitor's roster, unless that competitor is starting 2 really good quarterbacks, I think he'll be hard to grab, because he might just be that guy that helps them make the push in the playoffs. Okay, I would like to get him. Like, I love Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, of course. But I see what you mean. That's fair.
Elijah Mitchell is probably a guy I wouldn't be trying to acquire for much, because it seems like Jeff Wilson's doing just as good as he would be, right? So it's like, at that point, he seems interchangeable to me. And now he's got 2 years in a row of being unhealthy. I guess if the price is right.
Of course.
But that's a good point. The rest of the list I love. I think Mac Jones is a great one to try and buy. Trey Lance still might be a little difficult, but why not throw stabs at it? Mechie, Patrick, I really like. I'm not really trying to acquire too much Van Jefferson. Seems like he's just a big play guy more than anything.
Okay.
And it's funny because you put Mac Jones on there, because I always tell people, like, I don't think Mac Jones is any elite quarterback whatsoever. But when you surround mediocre to good quarterbacks, that's what I would label him as right now. When you surround them with really good talent, they're going to put really good numbers up. Like if you put Tua on the Patriots, I think Tua would be doing what Mac does. And I think if you put Mac on the Dolphins, I think Mac would be doing what Tua does. Like that, I think those guys are kind of comparable. So if New England can find a way to surround their young quarterback with really good talent, I hope he goes on IR, because I hope they start a crappy quarterback so we lose some games and get one of these really good wide receivers that are coming up in this next draft. All guys who I think situations could be a lot better next year, for sure.
Very nice.
With that being said, that kind of wraps it up for the meat and potatoes of this episode. We'll get to these questions in the chat, so stay tuned, guys. For those listening to this in the form of a podcast, we're going to end it right here, so you don't have to listen to us answer these questions, because you don't get to really see them. So thanks for listening. We will be back next week on the Dynasty Heat Seekers show, talking about something we'll find probably last minute to talk about. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's get to these questions. So Chase Banks was first in the chat. Says he's starting Herbert, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Cortland Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Conklin, Chase Edmonds. And then he lists his bench there.
Yeah,
this is a redraft.
I mean, I would not start Chase Edmonds. I hope he has a better option here.
It doesn't look like it.
Yeah, he does.
Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I'd start Cooks over Edmonds.
If he had Edmonds in this last week over Cooks, he did.
I know, but process over results.
I think you can you could look at that flex position, especially with those two options, as a matchup base.
I play Renfro and Cooks over Edmonds.
Yeah,
but I mean, and actually, I mean, for a 14-team league,
pretty good roster.
It's not bad. especially non-PPR. I mean, standard league, there's no way I'm playing Chase Edmonds. There's no way. I play Brandon Cooks 100 times out of 10. Oh, wait, what did I say? 100 times, whatever. Yeah. Just play Cooks, all right? Play Cooks. I told you I'm stupid. I got to dumb things down.
Yeah, I mean.
But who to trade? I mean, I don't know. Okay, look, what's his strength? He has Herbert and Flacco, so quarterback he can't trade. He has Kamara, Aaron Jones, and then no good backup running back. He can't trade running backs. He has Sutton, Curtis Samuel, Brandon Cooks. I mean, you can't really trade wide receiver either. I mean, what can you trade? Yeah, Conklin and Hunter Henry. I mean, I guess if Hunter Henry has a big game, maybe you can float Hunter Henry out, but he hasn't really done anything. I don't expect him to do anything this season. I know you were bigger on him than I was.
I was for them in the red zone, but they're just not getting there very much. And when they do, it seems like they're running it. I was kind of big on Jonnu Smith, and he's getting used a lot more than he did last year. I just worry now with Uzama coming back. How's Tyler Conklin going to look? That might be an issue that you come into.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough. I mean, you don't really have a lot of pieces you can really trade. I guess your strongest suit, I think, is wide receiver. If Hunter Renfrow and Brandon Cooks are good, and Cortland Sutton, I mean, in a 14-team league, that's not bad. Curtis Samuel's come on. I mean, maybe you could
nice floor.
Maybe you could package, Kamara and one of those wide receivers and upgrade your running back one, and then still get a pretty decent wide receiver on the back end to plug and play, or maybe an upgrade at tight end. That's something you can look at. You're going to have to just find that team that needs a wide receiver. I think wide receiver is your best angle here.
I would be probably trying to trade Kamara based on name value.
Yeah.
For like a lesser running back and a tight end, because I really worry about the tight end situation you're going to be coming into here soon. I think your wide receivers are fine with Sutton, Samuel, and Cook. Even throw in Renfrow and bye week sit or whatever. But like I'd be looking at the Cam Akers owner, because now Cam Akers is 2 weeks in a row out touching Daryl.
Okay, so your trade would be Kamara for Cam Akers and a better tight end.
Yeah.
Like Gerald Everett or something, or better than that.
Dalton Schultz. Look for Schultz.
Yeah, Schultz is injured now, though. That's a tough
but
one.
He'll be back next week. He was a game time decision yesterday. So
maybe if Kamara has a big game, or
you might have to wait. You might have to wait. But I mean, if this roster's 2-0, or I would imagine at best, or I'm sorry, 2-1. I mean, Sutton and I don't know. Sutton and Aaron Jones should have won you last week. And Sutton and Edmonds might have won you this week. So I don't know. I mean, Samuel Sutton and Aaron Jones probably won you your week last week, I would guess. Yeah. You're not starting a lot of people. That's a lot of points just between them three last week. So I'm guessing at worst you're 1-2. Probably around 2-1. I would just be looking. I'd probably hold on for now. If I was 2-1 or 1-2.
Yeah, wait for a big game. Or a nice couple stretch from Kamara or Aaron Jones. And I think that's kind of the angle. You have to just find that team that needs a good running back that would make that move. And then you can basically break even at running back, maybe take a slight hit, and then also upgrade another position like that. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, your running back depth is rough. So,
yeah.
Ingram and Mostert.
But it's a 14-team league. I mean, most teams are rough,
Pretty shallow rosters, too. Would you trade Deontay Johnson and Gabe Davis? That's so funny. I traded both these dudes in a trade yesterday.
Yeah, you did. Now did you get as good as a return?
It was Dynasty, so it's a little bit different because this is a redraft. I remember I got Pittman Jr., Brandon Ayuk in a second-round pick.
Yeah.
So I think it was a pretty even trade overall, but would you trade Deontay Johnson and Gabe Davis for Hawkinson for Kittle and Keenan Allen in a redraft?
So I would rather have Kittle and Keenan Allen. And I don't know if you agree with that, but the way I see it is I see Kittle as an upgrade over Kittle, and I see Keenan Allen as an upgrade over Deontay Johnson or Gabe Davis. if I have, it kind of just depends. It kind of just depends on my roster. Like if I have enough wide receivers to cover that extra when I lose, then I'd be all for it. I mean, basically you're upgrading 2 positions and only getting hurt at 1. And you may already have the depth. I mean, Deontay Johnson, I mean, he's no better than Curtis Samuel this year, right? I mean, if you think about it. So if I have a pretty deep redraft wide receiver crew, I'm for sure doing this trade and not even thinking about it.
What did Keenan Allen hurt?
It was like his. I think it's a hamstring. It's his leg for sure. Let me check.
If it's his hamstring,
but they said it was. They said it was like not that serious.
Yeah, but
it's a hamstring.
When have you heard about a wide receiver hurting their hamstring early in the season and it has not hampered them all year long? All year long. Like,
yeah, but I mean, Keenan Allen's different, though. I mean, Keenan Allen's a possession. Yeah, he's a possession type receiver.
Julio Jones at this point in his career, Keenan Allen's issue, hamstring injuries, and hindering him every week, right?
Yeah, but Gabe Davis is banged up too. I mean,
they're probably throwing in Gabe Davis because it's probably not making a starting roster. And
I don't think Gabe Davis is a throw-in. I mean, Gabe Davis is really good.
If it's a redraft, there's not many redraft leagues where Gabe Davis is starting, especially in like your traditional redraft leagues, like where a lot of people in redraft leagues are still got kickers and defenses. Like, believe it or not, like they're not starting 9 players, like they're starting 7 or 8, like actual skill position players. So if you're starting 7, I wouldn't be surprised if Gabe Davis isn't finding his way in your starting lineup. And it seems like he is put in this trade to kind of cover the gap between Allen and Johnson. And I just don't think it's a gap that I'm too concerned about because I think Deontay Johnson's just going to they're going to have to, that offense is stagnant right now. Mike Tomlin's not going to keep starting Trubisky for a long time.
Okay, well, I got a question for you. If you had a bet, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, or Keenan Allen, PPR, who would end the season from week 4 forward with more fantasy points? It wouldn't be Keenan Allen?
The concern, healthy, it'd be Keenan Allen.
I know the concern. I'm asking you. I know that. I know his health. Who would you bet? And I'm not going to bet you, but I'm just asking, who would you bet?
Knowing what I know now.
Knowing what you know at
right now.
What time is it right now? 8:58 p.m. Tuesday, September 27th.
I am more confident that Deontay Johnson plays the rest of the games and Keenan Allen misses definitely a couple of more.
But so you think Deontay Johnson will outscore Keenan Allen from week 4 forward?
I think he'll outscore him in total. He will not average more than him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what I meant. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah. To be fair, Keenan Allen is not on my good side. He looked right in that camera and said, "Start me." On TV.
Oh, so it's personal.
And
it's personal. Whoa. This is getting good now. I didn't know this was a personal vendetta against Keenan Allen.
But let me ask you something too. Who has a higher floor, Deontay Johnson or Keenan Allen?
A higher floor? I would say in this offense, I would say this season, Keenan Allen.
This season? What about
PPR. What's that?
What about last season?
Last season, hey, was it you? It was you and Rick. Who said Ben Roethlisberger was better than Mitchell Trubisky? Do you still believe that Mitchell Trubisky is better for this offense than Ben Roethlisberger was last year?
Mitchell Trubisky, I think, has looked worse than really.
Come on! I mean, everyone's like talking about how bad Ben was.
About Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky starts 2 more weeks. I think he loses his job. If he does not play lights out pretty much this next week, I think he loses his job.
But so with the uncertainty at quarterback for Deontay Johnson, between Trubisky, who is worse than Ben Roethlisberger, and with the uncertainty of what Pickett's going to be this season in his rookie year, I would say Keenan Allen has a higher floor. Yes.
Deontay Johnson is averaging 14 points a week, and I don't think he's scored under 10. He is not. So, I mean, he's never really disappointing you. But is he going to win you weeks like Keenan Allen with Herbert at quarterback?
No.
Probably not. But if it's just, again, the health issue. That's the only concern for me is the health issue. So I will lean the Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Hawkinson side, but the trade overall is even. It really is. Because, one side has two injury-prone people compared to one side that has really the best two players on its side doesn't have injury-prone people. Yeah, Gabe Davis is a little banged up after week.
Deontay is a little banged up, too.
Not really. I don't remember Deontay Johnson missing a game last year or even the year before. The only concern he has is drops. And that's been corrected since his.
I think Hawkinson was hurt too last year.
He got hurt a little bit last year, yeah. But that's the third highest scoring offense as well. Hawkinson's on right now. So, touchdown upsides there. I can't blame either side. I just think it's. I really think I'd rather have the Johnson and Hawkinson side by a little bit.
All right.
Should I trade Mike Williams for Pitts? He also has Keenan Allen.
Well, in redraft,
this got to be a redraft question.
I mean,
it's got to be a redraft question.
All right.
There's no way this is a dynasty question. Ray, if you're in here, just put if it's redraft or dynasty. It's got to be.
Let's assume it's redraft.
It's got to be.
I'd rather have Pitts. 100%. I'd rather have Pitts for sure. Mike Williams is so inconsistent. Pitts is finally coming on strong. Tight end is such a tough position. And and not only that, but he has Ertz. Well, what happens when DeAndre Hopkins comes back? I mean, now's the time to have Pitts and trade Ertz. Now's the time to trade Ertz.
Right.
So I'd rather have Pitts, trade Ertz, and for Ertz, you can get a wide receiver. A pretty good wide receiver. Maybe let's say Gabe Davis. So that way you have Gabriel Davis instead of Mike Williams, which is. Probably at the end of the year, a little bit of a downgrade, but as we've seen with how inconsistent Mike Williams is, not that bad. And then you get a huge upgrade at tight end with Pitts. So,
right,
I'd rather have Pitts, and I would trade Ertz.
Yep, I agree. I actually skipped this question.
Oh,
he's in
no.
a 12-man keeper, and he's hurting bad. So I was looking at this question when we were in there, and
you were distracted.
I was looking at this question earlier.
You were zoned out when I was rambling on.
When he got asked, and it's just like, what do you do in this situation? That's a keeper league.
All right, so read this out because I didn't read this. Let's see.
In a 12-man keeper league, he's hurting.
Herbert and Fields, that sucks. Kamara, Javonte Williams. I mean, that's not terrible, but Kamara's, Michael Carter, Henderson's done in redraft. Kenneth Walker. Man, how do you feel about Penny right now? Jeez.
He had good yards per carry last week.
Oh, that's good. Okay. All right. Sorry, I had to dig you there. Okay.
I got. What did Ken Walker do? It's not like anybody's doing anything.
No, the question you said was trade CEH for Penny. That's what it was. No, I was like, no way. All right. Sorry. We're getting off topic, Tony. Sorry. All right. McLaurin. I don't know if that David Johnson, probably not. Deontay Johnson, Mooney, cutting. Oh, don't cut Mooney. I wouldn't. I mean, unless you have to. I wouldn't want to. You know what? I would cut Kenneth Walker. Oh, it's a keeper league though. 12-man keeper. Yeah, I wouldn't cut Mooney. I mean, I don't know how many people you can keep. But if it's less than 5, I'm cutting Kenneth Walker before Mooney for sure. I think you could regret cutting Mooney, Tony.
I'd be cutting Darrell Henderson before either of them.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how many keepers you have. But I'm not cutting Mooney. especially in a keeper league. I don't even want to cut him in a regular redraft league. So, yeah, I mean, you've had some bad luck. But again, this is one of those situations. I guess it's a keeper league. I would keep trying to win. In a keeper league,
yeah, I'd weather the storm.
Just keep trying to win. Yeah, maybe you won't get as good of a pick, but in a keeper league, I would just try to win at this point. See what you can do.
It all depends on how many you keep too.
And you can always trade later. Like if you're done, oh yeah, see, he only keeps one. Don't make it personal. I know Bryce likes to have these personal attacks on these players when they say to start them and they don't do good. Don't make it personal. Keep Mooney. You may really regret that. I know he's had a really tough start to the year. I would definitely cut Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, so he said all these guys are out there. I wouldn't be cutting Darnell Mooney for any of them.
No, I wouldn't either.
Sure.
And I'm the biggest Zay Jones supporter there is. I was talking about him in the offseason. I know we were just talking about that, I think, before the stream started. I would not cut any of your guys on your roster for Mac Hollins or Zay Jones. People like to just kind of follow the points from last week because they had such a good game, but most of the time these guys are just like one-hit wonders and you don't hear about them for another few weeks.
Yeah.
I think Zay Jones, I mean, actually, I would probably roster Zay Jones over Kenneth Walker on your team. But I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to do it. I wouldn't be burning a waiver priority or any fab to do it. I don't think you need to do that.
Because if you're keeping one at the end of the year, you're probably keeping Javonte Williams.
Yeah, he would be, for sure.
So, yeah, I would be cutting probably. I wouldn't worry about Kenneth Walker because I don't see that coming anytime soon. Michael Carter, Darrell Henderson, all guys.
The only chance Kenneth Walker has to be successful is
Penny gets hurt.
Penny has to get hurt, and the offense has to be functional. Because even when Kenneth Walker wasn't playing, Penny wasn't really startable even at that point. So to think that Kenneth Walker, even if that happened, would be turning into like fantasy gold, it's
Penny's going to be matchup based for the rest of the year, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just probably not
that's if you're thin.
Yeah.
Traded Brian Robinson and Bateman for Edmonds and Renfro, 12-man PPR.
Well, I'd rather have Brian Robinson and Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I want the best player in this trade, which is Rashad Bateman. If this is a dynasty, I definitely would rather have Brian Robinson and Bateman.
Definitely, even in redraft.
Yeah, even in redraft. I mean, I could get it if you're really, really hurting at running back, and Chase Edmonds has been not a god awful option. But it seems like they're trying to get Raheem Mostert involved in that offense, especially as like the true running guy. It is a redraft, he said. So
I just noticed
makes
too.
It closer.
Yeah, and I just noticed Tony, who we just talked to with his team, his keeper league. He's a Bears fan. You see his little logo? I just noticed that he has a little Bears helmet. So he's like, he's discouraged by Mooney on like a personal level because he probably bought his jersey.
Probably got a Fields jersey before that, I would guess.
Yeah, don't cut Mooney, Tony. And yeah, I mean, on this trade here, Brian Robinson and Bateman win it for me. I'm not exactly sure which side you're on because sometimes it's a little vague when you just say I traded so-and-so for so-and-so, but I like the Brian Robinson side and the Bateman side.
I just don't. I mean, redraft. I don't really see Brian Robinson having any value.
No, I disagree. I mean, I think Brian Robinson. I mean, he had such good buzz. He's liked by the team so much. I mean, are the Commanders? Yeah, I know, but are the Commanders really like competing? I mean, I think the Commanders owners would care more about a feel good story with one of their athletes coming back from a tragic accident like that. I mean, are they really competing? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, but I don't really see Brian Robinson as much of a PPR threat like I do with Gibson out there. Like I feel like Gibson's going to be more involved in the pass game than I would expect Brian Robinson to be if he comes back and takes that starting job. Obviously JD McKissic's there too, so it's like, does Brian Robinson's value really change from like a guy like Damian Harris? I don't know. I don't know. It might be touchdown dependent is the only issue.
I will say, I mean, if you did get Edmonds and Renfro, it's really not. I mean, it's not like even if I don't prefer that side, it's not like it's really that bad. Renfro,
yeah,
I hope he's okay.
You probably didn't start Bateman to be a starter in your lineup anyway. And if you drafted a running back that's just not performing, and you got now Edmonds that is doing all right, and you could plug him in, I could see how this could benefit your team and their team. So
right.
I don't really hate it either way. Bateman's the best player in the trade, though. So usually when it comes to guys of this caliber, I prefer the best player in a vacuum. But if it overall helps your roster, like if now Edmonds becomes a starter in your roster and Bateman was just sitting on your bench because you have good wide receivers,
right? I can see that.
It benefited you, right? So, yes, I think this is the time to get him. Like, I think his value is going to go up. He did fumble on the goal line yesterday or Sunday, which was crappy, and he fumbled reaching for the touchdown, and he was like 2 inches away from it, which was terrible. But he's taking over. He's taking over as the lead back. He's still not starting, but he's getting the most touches. He looks by far better than Darrell Henderson. Like, he's just better than him. He's just as explosive through the middle, and Henderson reminds me a lot like Zeke, the way he runs. Like, he finds the hole and then he just hits it, right? Where Cam Akers is more like he's trying to make plays after he gets to the second level. Like, Henderson's pretty okay with initiating contact and going down at that point, where Cam Akers is always looking to get more. So, and that offense needs that right now. So Cam Akers right now is a guy I'd be trading for.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't overpay for Akers. So just if you can't get the right value,
right? Which I think right now you're going to get the right value. And then last question, then we're going to get out of here. In my other 10-man league, my QBs are Wilson and Tua. Would you cut either for Goff, Stafford, Winston, Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Matt Ryan? Those are the best ones out there. So obviously a one quarterback league.
Well, I'd rather have Stafford over Zach Wilson or Russell Wilson.
I'm sure
any Wilson.
This is
any Wilson. Russell. I'd rather have Stafford. I'd also rather have Trevor Lawrence over Russell Wilson. That's close, though.
Jared Goff's not playing bad either. Like,
yeah, I can't trust Goff. But
Goff's going to have his bad weeks, but when you're the number 3 scoring offense right now with, like, not really.
You know what? I mean, I would cut Russell Wilson. You know, let someone else own him. Let someone else get 9 points. I don't want him on my team. I have him in a redraft league. I'm going to be cutting him, especially in a 10-man league. Like, no, I would cut Russell Wilson. I would probably.
I mean, you're really cutting Russell Wilson to roster a guy you're probably only going to start once
until Tua's healthy.
Was he going to miss time?
Well, I don't know. I don't really want to start Tua this week until I see how he is. I mean, he was hit pretty hard this past week.
If he's playing, I'm starting him.
All right. Well, if you're going to start Tua, you don't even need a backup quarterback with these options on the waiver wire.
That's what I was thinking. Like,
yeah,
I would be dropping, especially in a 10-man league. You probably got some good. I would be dropping Wilson for Khalil Herbert, or Jamal Williams or Alexander Madison. That's what I would be doing.
I'd even rather roster Jalen Warren over a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, look, and I say this a lot, but especially in a redraft league, your bench spots are gold. They're gold. And why waste a bench spot on a player like Russell Wilson when there's already a bunch of Russell Wilsons on the waiver wire that are all comparable to him anyway? So use that bench spot to get a step ahead of your opponents. You know, roster a handcuff with upside. Take a shot on, someone like Mac Hollins. I mean, in a 10-man league, you're going to have better options than that. But my point is, every bench spot should be with a purpose, and don't waste a bench spot for a player that already is on the waiver wire with a different name.
I'm going to answer this question easy. If Tua for sure going on Thursday, I'm going to look at all these quarterbacks and see which one plays the weakest matchup. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Jared Goff plays Seattle, who's 17th against the pass. Trevor Lawrence is against Philly, who's 6th. So no. Who is Stafford going against?
Yeah, but if you're comfortable starting Tua on Thursday,
right? If Tua for some reason, because apparently the NFL is investigating that hit, the NFLPA. If for some reason Tua is not playing on Thursday, I'm dropping Russell Wilson and I'm picking up. Actually, let me see if he's playing a weak defense or weak offense. I'm picking up Jared Goff playing against Seattle. But let me look up Russell Wilson's matchup and what their defense is allowing towards it. And that's how I go about this.
I'm good with that.
They are going against the Raiders, who is 27th against the pass. So I'm just going to stick with Russell Wilson and plug him in. Yeah. That's how I'd go about that.
Yeah, but if Tua plays, you'd play Tua, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Throwing to Waddle and Tyreek Hill, Tua could throw a 3-yard pass and get 70 yards out of it every game. And
don't waste bench spots.
Tua's deep ball has looked good, just like I told people it would, because you can't throw deep balls when you don't have like deep ball receivers. Just like how Tom Brady was getting hate when he was in his last years with New England. You got to play. You got to quarterbacks play with the talent around them. You can't just like force deep balls to guys that can't catch them or can't get open on them.
Yeah.
It's not the problem.
And, the other reason why I always stream kicker and defense in these redraft leagues is at the extra bench spot. It's like if I don't know for sure on Thursday if Tua is going to play and I don't have a bench spot, it's like rather than cutting Wilson, who I might start on Sunday, I just cut my kicker.
Yeah.
Just cut your defense.
If Tua gets labeled out, you could throw him on your IR real quick.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to wait till game day. It's already past waivers run. So to get by that, buy yourself some more time. Yeah. Stream your defense and kicker and use them as the extra bench spot.
A lot of redraft leagues will allow you to pick up a player as long as their time hasn't started. Like waivers will run on Wednesday, right? And then after that, there's no time. Like it's first.
No. I know that, but if you need to put in a bid for, Khalil Herbert. Let's say he wants to pick up Khalil Herbert with Russell Wilson, but he may need to start Russell Wilson on Sunday. And he has to wait till Thursday for Tua to go on IR to free up that spot. Don't cut Russell Wilson. Cut your kicker. Cut your defense. And then that way you still keep Russell Wilson. You still get the waiver priority with Khalil Herbert. So now you have Khalil Herbert. You just don't have a kicker. But on Thursday, if Tua plays, then you just drop Russell Wilson at that point for a kicker and start a kicker on Sunday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you could do it that way too. It's fine.
That's the way I do it.
Yeah, I would just wait till Tua gets put on IR and then just throw. I guess.
No, but then you can't use the waiver.
You can just use your kicker as the waiver. Then put your kicker.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, drop your kicker.
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying like. I try to make sure my kicker and defense are usually expendable. I want those extra bench spots to make moves like that. Right. So that's why I'll never draft a kicker or defense early. I want those to be expendable spots.
That's fair. All right. That's it for us today, guys. We will see you next week, same time, 7 Eastern, talking about something to do with week 4 in Dynasty Leagues. What are we doing with our rosters? Anything like that. Guys just targeting trades. Who knows what we'll talk about. We'll figure it out, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.